morning. Since I'm tall, I sit down, also because I have a problem with the back. Before starting the technical session, I would like to say a few words. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for having invited me to participate in this event. And also to reiterate a welcome to Rome. It's a beautiful city. I'm not from Rome, I live in Rome, I enjoy it very much. Let me say that I like very much the title of this event. And I would like to recall small solutions for big water-related problems. And because I strongly believe, from a personal experience, that by adding up the small solutions, it will be possible at the end of this symposium, or it is a hope, to produce a great solution, to pave the way so that the big water problem will become smaller and smaller. In addition, I'm sure that this conference will contribute and support not only the food security, as written in the subtitle, but also food safety. I'm also convinced that by safeguarding European health, global health will be enhanced, promoting thus the concept of one world and one health. So one health for everybody. Okay, with this short foreword, we pass now to the presentations, technical presentation. I understand there is a slightly different sequence in the presentation. I would like to call, whether they are present, first Mr. or Mrs. Pineschi from the Ministry of Environment in Italy. Mr. Okay, sorry. Then there should be, thank you, then there should be Colagrossi from Ministry of Health. Okay, Mrs. Thank you. And then Mrs. Menne, from representative of WHO from Bonn, Germany. Is she here? Not yet. So anyway, this is the first, second, and we will see. The organizer told me that you have 20-25 minutes for your presentation and 5-10 minutes for the questions. Please, short questions and short answer. We target the efficacy. Okay, thank you.
So I think that we stand up for my presentation. Okay. And just to introduce myself, I'm Giorgio Pineschi. I work for the Water Directorate in the Italian Ministry of Environment. I'm here to provide a general presentation on strategies and challenges for water protection across Europe. So the content is really general, and then you will go in a particular and specific issues. So I cannot start speaking about water in this time period without speaking about water quantity, and in particular too much water. We are really passing through a very difficult period where disaster again and again are hitting our country, and all the regions from north to center to south are hit by those extreme events, which are also triggered by climate change that is making these events more frequent and more dangerous for all the territory. At least all the regions, all the municipalities are hit by this kind of events. Quite the whole Italian territory is under risk of flooding and landslides. So it's a very, very huge problem for Italy and for a large part of Europe. But it's not only a problem of the land. Also, the big cities are under the pressure of flooding, just not for natural situation, but for man-made situation, for the sewers that are not built for discharge those amount of water which are performing for the climate change in the last decades. You can see also Rome and other cities, Messina, Genova. It's very frequent in the large cities to be flooded. But quantity means also too scarce. We have problems in the past decades, not in the recent, but these events are to be probably in the future frequent again, to have a lack of water. But again, we have to recognize what means lack of water. We have natural situation and artificial situation, and permanent situation and a temporary one. So the aridity is a natural condition which is the result of a few rainwater, and so it's the desert, for instance, is aridity situation. So it's natural and it's permanent. But drought is again a reduction of precipitation, but it's still natural, but it's temporary. So many times we are referring to drought to indicate any kind of lack of water, but it's a temporary effect, and it's not occurring every year. It's a sort of deviation for a mean value which causes water stress in a region. And water shortage or water scarcity is not natural. It's a man-made situation where too much the use of water is not balanced with the availability. So it's a situation could be temporary, but it's not natural. It's artificial. And for our country and for many member states, this is the more common situation where water is not used in a proper way, and then there is an imbalanced situation. And then desertification, again, it's a permanent situation where water is so managed in a so bad way that the land becomes desert. It's not very common in Europe. Even in Italy, we have very limited areas where we are going to a desertification, but it's a risk. It's a big hazard, so we have to watch to not dry the land and not to use water in the way to make desert where there are not. Another pressure is, for instance, is for sure water quality, and the pollution of water is still a very, very important driver for the policies for water management and water protection. And we have point sources, discharges, and we have diffuse pollution from agriculture, from cities, from industries. We have diffuse pollution from manure, for industries. And then we still are coping with the implementation of very old directives asking for the treatment of point sources and diffuse pollution. For instance, Italy is an infringement for many cases of not having implemented correctly the urban wastewater directive, which is a directive which is 1991, so it's very old. We still have problems in the basics to treat and to clean wastewater. But the answer to this frame of problems on water resources, responses are in place. Water Framework Directive and Flood Directive are very important European tools to address an integrated approach for water management, water protection, asking for a clear objective to be reached in a very clear time. I don't want to go inside the directives because I think they are really well known, because you are all experts in water, so probably you know very well those directives. But let me introduce you that the real reason why we have a common approach to water protection is probably because water is a common good. It's not respecting the national limits, the political limits of the countries, is crossing the borders, and so we have shared river basins in Europe. So there is a strong need to have a common approach to flood protection and to water quality protection. So probably this is the reason why this is the international river basins in Europe. It means not just EU, also shared with other countries not European. This is the real reason why we have a common policy on water. But the basics is to manage water on the basis of those river basins. In Europe, we have this picture is showing the river basins in Europe, and you can see that this river basin approach, the unit where to implement actions, it's a challenge because the situation in Greece or Italy or UK is rather different from the other basins in Europe, which are larger and bigger, and also the climate will change a lot. So to implement those approaches across Europe is not something trivial, it's not something easy. You have to specify on the basis of the climate, on the basis of the dimension you have in your country. So solutions are not all sites fitted. You have to specialize your approach to what you have in your country, in your land, in your water body, in the concrete on the ground. In Italy, this is the surface network. We identified water bodies according to the water framework directive, and then the river basins are the physical, hydrogeological water river basin are those, and we selected 8 river basin districts according to the water framework directive implementation to have a management of all the water-related issues. So we are still in a transitional period. River basin authorities are still the old one. We are going to implement the new river basin authorities. And just to highlight you, I don't want to go inside this issue, but just to tell you that governance is an issue. To have the capability to have a strong management of all the water-related issues at one scale, for instance, river basin district, is an issue. You have to manage also the administrative level. Behind this figure, we have 21 regions. We have about 8,000 municipalities. We have about 1,000 provinces. So it's the managerial of those issues, the management of these issues have to cope with the administrative level, which is not easy to overlap with the river basin management approach. So, basically, the Water Framework Directive is asking for the good status for all river bodies, for all water bodies, within 2015. And the approach is to look at the biology first. So, the main concern is to reach a good ecological status, which ecological is the main word to be focused on, within 2015, and it's looking at quality of water bodies. This is the really main approach of Water Framework Directive. On the other hand, Flood Directive is asking for hydromorphological conditions which are in line with a safe condition for all the human beings. And it means that you have to make dams, you have to realize dikes and infrastructure to protect human beings. It means to have an approach for prevention, protection, preparedness, forecast, and early warning. So you are managing the same subjects, rivers, lakes, coastal waters, but with a different purpose. And then conflicts could arise between the implementation of those 2 important directives, because you have to do something different. In one hand, you have to more or less try to reach the good status, which is a slight deviation for a condition with no impact from human pressure, more or less the Eden. Then, on the other hand, you have to protect the territory, the land, the people, and the factories and industries and so on, which is another game. But the timing is more or less the same. Water Framework Directive, the objective is in 2015, and under the Flood Directive, you have to implement the river basin management plan with the same time frame. And in both the directive, you have to implement measures. So you have to select action to be implemented, to spend money, to convince people to do that with the same mechanism. So it's really necessary to get a coordination between the two directives and to go around and to erase the conflicts. And there is the need for new tools and new approaches to have this sort of combination of coordination of the two directives. I don't want to lose too much time because it's just an introduction of your works, but a recent initiative from the European member states and the Commission, the so-called the blueprint, in 2012, it's a communication from the Commission to the Parliament, is providing some advices about how to select measures which could in some way to merge the two directives and to implement in only one action the same objectives, and putting starting from the idea that the existing directives are the best that we can have, but a better implementation is needed, and an integration of different policies is needed, and the objective is to ensure that sufficient quality and quantity of the good water is supplied for all the people, and keeping the environment and the economic issues as a background to be faced. The blueprint is highlighting that multi-purpose, multi-efforts solutions are, for instance, to restore floodplains and wetlands. This is a way to have both the chance to have a high value, ecological value, and then reaching the good status, ecological status, and giving to the rivers and to the lakes the space to flow and without reducing risk for human beings. Environmental flow is an issue. So it's how to assess how much water should be left in rivers to support ecosystems. And it's a matter of reducing abstractions from rivers and to have a more balanced way to cope with water scarcity, for instance, I was saying before. And again, Room for the River, it's a title of a Dutch project, but it's really clear to leave space to the river, to let the river perform its functions, because those functions are the one that we need for flood protection and the one we need for water protection. And then prefer green infrastructure like green roofs or pond systems to a small solution is the title of your conference. Small solution to help in reaching the objectives. So not only gray infrastructure, big dikes, big dams, but also small solution at local scale to help in reaching the objectives. And among those, for instance, the natural water retention measure is a new approach to have the control, especially in urban areas, of flooding, having also the chance to restore natural habitats. And another very new and very promising approach is to implement the artificial recharge of groundwater, using surface water to keep the aquifer in a good status. And then other solutions suggested by the blueprint are to reduce leakages, to go for a common approach for wastewater reuse, to combat illegal abstraction, putting metering at every use, implement a water pricing policy that could help in reducing the waste of water, and implement also an economic policy and going to better understand the benefits of some measure in comparison to other, to go for the better environmental solution. And in this case, not always the better environmental solution is a large one. Probably the small solution, the small measure at local scale could deliver an economical and ecological benefit more than a large one. But also sustainability is an issue. to have the chance to look how flood directive and water framework directive impacts on the environment for sure, but also on social and economic issues. And let me say that another important approach that it's already inside the two directives is the negotiated environmental agreements, which are a bottom-up solution to let all the people, all the stakeholders concerned on water issues can participate to select the best measure, the one that are most acceptable to the public. And we are moving to this kind of agreements, and we are now organizing, as Minister of Environment, a number of events to support the chance to involve more people for the protection of the river bodies and the lakes and so on. This approach, bottom-up, was developed in France and Belgium in the 80s and the 90s, and starting for 2000, also in Italy now we are approaching to those river contracts, which are really a very nice and a good tool to transfer all the issues that I try to present very briefly to you, so to think global and act local for reaching the same objectives of the very big European directives. In a very conclusion, sorry for, it's not really, okay, but the blueprint, the new approach is to go for the green solution. So together with the gray solution, which are the very concrete infrastructure made by concrete, I mean, so dams and dikes and so on. I'm an engineer, so I'm speaking about something that I used to implement this kind of solution, to think also for the green one. And especially for water management and for water supply and sanitation and flood protection. Also in agriculture, to turn from blue water to green water. Blue water is the surface and groundwater, the one that is better to live there in the rivers, in the groundwater, because it's a part of the natural budget, and to go for the green water, which is the one that is the irrigation water, for instance, in agriculture. So it's a matter of changing mind, and to try to do the best use of water, and to look for solutions that could fit on our reality. Thank you.